Good morning. It is a beautiful day. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us. I am your host, John Cox, and this is the Core Keyword Podcast, episode number 6. We are entitling this one The Dumpster Fire That Is To Be, as we are going to be taking a look at the Show Me Showdown Major. It's a 102-person major in Lee Summit, Missouri, July 14th to the 16th. Joining me today on the panel is the captain of the Hogs of War, Howard Watts, and he's trading his drop pods for D-cannons, Bryce Watson.
I like that.
Hey guys, how we doing?
Good, man.
Feel a little called out, but it's accurate.
It is not inaccurate, especially in this meta.
I just like that Eldar has a specific weapon that also has D in it, because that's what Bryce is bringing. The D, baby.
No, Ward, I want you to be bringing the D. I want you to be bringing the Desolation Marines.
Ugh.
Guys. So, Show Me Showdown. It's a 102-person major, and it's got a few problems, specifically problems of GW's making, that the tournament organizers have said, yeah, we're just going to let that happen. We're gonna see how it goes.
Yeah, before we dive into this player pack, can we just take a second to acknowledge the position that Nathan, the guy who runs Show Me Showdown, is finding himself in, right? Like, we're gonna be talking about this player pack that has some issues, but it's not a problem of his creating. I kind of feel for the position that he's in.
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
So he's in this position where it's either accept the rules for what they are, a dumpster fire, or make all these changes and all these amendments to the rules that people may or may not be tracking in the event and rulings documents, and then somebody does something in a game and creates a bad play experience, and as a TO or whatever has to fix that. So it is just rules as written, just get after it, 40k in the wild west. That's 10th edition.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second, because 10th edition is very new, right? I have played 3 games of 10th edition. I have watched about 18. Bryce, how many games of 10th have you played?
Oh goodness, I've probably played 5 with Space Marines, and I've run Eldar at an RTT now, so not more than 10. Probably around 8.
And then watched a few more than that. And then, Ward, you've played 1 game of 10th?
I played a single, very infuriating game of 10th, yes.
Yeah.
I heard about that. Just so you know.
Look, and
it happened to me too.
And for the record, I am a very relaxed player, and I have never been, even in my employment, as aggravated or as frustrated. Not at my opponent, but just at the sheer. Just there had to have been absolutely no play testing done to allow some of the things that has made its way into a live edition of 40k, but that's for another day.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess. From our experience, right, I think collectively we can say that the games generally are decided by turn 3, if not 9.
Yeah, so when we first saw
Less
these
lethal,
rules,
by the way,
when we first saw these rules come out, I remember talking with Peyton about there was these 2 things that Games Workshop talked about that they wanted in 10th edition, right? They wanted it to be less lethal, and they wanted games to go faster. And at the time we saw that, and we talked you don't really get to choose to do both of those, right? How do you make the game less lethal but also faster?
Well, and the other thing they said was more models, right? That was the other thing they were trying to do, is have more models on the board.
For some armies, that's true. I will refer back to what Ward was just talking about, that soured him. Some armies get a lot more models.
I know you can't see me at my house, but I'm literally shaking my head left and right. It is mind-boggling. But
yeah.
Anyways.
Oh, I commiserate with you, Ward.
Showdown.
I played him round 2 at the RTT. I fully experienced what it was. Genesteal Cult, for those who are unaware of what we're talking about, they're not a C-tier army.
They are absolutely not. Some of their army rules are...
But anyways, show me Showdown.
Yeah, no. Okay, so 10th generally, right, the games tend to be decided very fast. What we're expecting as far as armies is we're expecting to see a lot of the armies that we know are busted. If it has towering, if it can ignore the fact that terrain exists, if it has a busted rule, Eldar, if it can do all of the above, Eldar. We're expecting to see that en masse. We were just taking a glance through some of the players that have registered. You said Kyle McCord is registered for Eldari, so we know that's going to be nonsense.
If you're able to pull
right?
the faction diehard like Kyle McCord is for guard, and Eldar is able to pull him away, you know the game is in a particular situation.
So why roll dice when you can just pick the dice that you want?
Yeah. Eldari. And Knights, right? Because the Metamunda came out today showing the first data from the GTs and RTCs that happened on release weekend. And Knights, Imperial Knights had a higher win percentage than Eldari.
I saw those, and I was curious, so for one, I think, because it was the first set of data for 10th edition, right? It was the first weekend people were running 10th edition events. I am of the opinion that the reason it was Knights, they are busted, towering is dumb, but I'm of the opinion that people are still trying to gather their 3 Wraith Knights.
Yeah, nobody had 3 Wraith Knights just laying over. That's probably. Although with D-cannons going from, unit size down to...
It gives you hope that, there might be some sort of patch to it, right? I've heard Index Hammer described as the beta version of 10th edition, but you would have hoped that if that were the case, this past Saturday or today, right after the official edition launch, we would have seen something in line with the Death Watch changes that they instituted.
Yeah, that, and coming from a person that has actively wanted to start playing Death Watch, I don't have the army hobbied at all, but a goal of mine is to make a fully converted Death Watch army. And I go, wait, so if you do this interaction and this one, you can put out 70 mortal wounds in a turn against infantry? Yeah, that seems a little broken, and immediately gets fixed. And yet, Eldar, that is I can do the same thing with Fate Dice in Overwatch, in my normal shooting, or in this other however many ways they can do it, and do an equivalent amount of mortal wounds. Yeah, but let's not mess with Eldar. It blows my mind. But
yeah, we will definitely get some good data out of this event, as it's certainly got enough players that are going to get a nice slice.
So my question to you before we dive into this is, out of the 100-ish players that are currently registered, and there might be some more, how many of the top 10 do you think are going to be Eldar and or Knights?
Are we counting both Knight variants as Knights, like Chaos and Imperial?
I don't know the difference between the factions well enough to know. I assume that 3 or 4 big towering Knights is as problematic as the other 3 or 4 big towering Knights, but I do not know the differences.
It's fairly congruent. The towering is the issue, but I think if you include the Chaos Knights, Imperial Knights, quote, towering models, and Eldar with towering models, as a percentage of the field, and there should be more than 102 registered by the time we kick off, but it just call it an even 120. I would imagine there's at least 30, if not more, of the field is going to be that. I'd be shocked otherwise.
So you would expect, right, with 30 of the field being Eldar and Knights, that you would get 2 to 3 of the top 10 being Eldar or Knights. But what I'm going to say is Peyton going to show me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say 9 of the top 10 are going to be Eldar and or some variant of Knights, because Peyton will be in the top 10.
Yeah, because if you don't know what Gene Stealer cults do, and you thought they were wild and crazy in 9th, boy howdy, you just have a
if you thought that
good heavens.
If you thought that their damage went down and they were going to become the skirmishy, you kill me a lot, but I score a lot of points, but I can't really kill you, you're just wrong.
Yeah, you need to peep what demo charges do now.
Peep what a demo charge
they were
does.
already good.
Peep aberrants in 10-man squads. Though that might get adjusted because of one of the rulings that they made. That particular unit might be a little bit weaker, but we'll get into that.
Well, let's just go ahead and start there, right? Because we have the rulings for the event, or what's going to flavor the rest of the conversation we're going to have. So, what rulings have they made that you think are going to have the biggest impact? Right, because they went out and said, we're going to follow GW's rules, and then people were like, okay, well, we've got some questions. What do the rules mean?
Yeah, so I'll touch on what I was meaning with the aberrants. So one of the items that they have addressed is the interaction between infiltrating unit and redeploys. So infiltrate is the new ability keyword that allows you to set up a unit in no man's land. I believe it has the same restrictions from 9th edition, that you can't be 9 inches away from your enemy. You have to be more than 9 inches away from your enemy deployment zone, but you can set up in no man's land. So the ruling that Show Me has created. So the question was, if an infiltrate unit is redeployed for some reason, can it still use the infiltrate ability? Their ruling on that is no. Infiltrate states this ability is used during the deployment step. So they're keeping that ruling in line with 9th edition, which was ruled that infiltrate was during deployment. When you're redeploying, you are no longer in deployment. If you want to redeploy a no man's land infiltrating unit, they have to go either into reserves or in your deployment zone. Where this is interesting is this is actually a ruling against what the WTC has ruled. And so I believe it's written as in the book. I'm not sure which ruling follows the book because I haven't quite looked, but so 10 aberrants can no longer be redeployed in the midfield. Makes that one unit a little bit worse.
One of the interesting ones that I'm reading right now, and I don't know if it will be run, but it's an interesting take, is that the Black Templar Gladiator and the Space Marine Gladiator are two separate data sheets. So the question is, can a Black Templar army using the Gladius detachment take 6 Gladiator tanks? And their ruling is yes, since the Gladius detachment does not restrict the data sheets in the same way that the Righteous Crusaders detachment does. You may field 3 of each data sheet. 6 Gladiator tanks. Oh boy.
I mean, in a different meta, that might be a more worrying ruling.
I mean, you do get a ton of shots.
You do. You get an absolute ton of shots.
Amount, but I don't know what it does against Imperial Knights, but
that's kind of what Knights of the Wraith variety. It's one of the that one's, like I said, in a different world where like towering didn't exist. I can see that being more of a problem, at least as far as like something you'd need to plan for going there. And it's weird. I don't know if that is like rules as written. Yeah, I guess so. Seems weird.
Have we talked about the eligibility to shoot one yet?
No, let's dive into this.
So this one is nuts. I was at work earlier today, and this conversation kind of kicked up on our Facebook chat, and it was kind of based, like, we were kind of talking about secondaries and models being able to do actions and shoot or whatever as far as list building for Show Me. And then it was brought up to me that the item in question that was being spoken about was what is required for eligibility to shoot. And the issue that somebody raised is that a model, according to the book, is eligible to shoot unless it advanced, fell back, or is locked in combat. So I guess somebody read the rules and posed the question: if a unit has already shot its weapon during the shooting step, can it still be targeted by any abilities which require it to be eligible to shoot? Or action, which is, a lot of the verbiage on the cards is, if you're not battle shocked and you are eligible to shoot, you can do X, right? And the ruling is yes, per the rules, as long as the model satisfies the eligibility to shoot requirements, it is eligible to shoot, regardless if it has shot his weapon, which is a clear mistake by GW and very poorly worded in typical GW fashion, but if your game plan was to do actions or your access to tactical objectives with units coming out of deep strike reserves or coming in from rapid ingress and doing it the next turn, you're going to have a lot of units that can just shoot their guns and don't lose. There's no downside to it, which is nuts.
Shooting doesn't make you ineligible to shoot is a wild take that is rules as written, but I am very surprised that the TO went ahead and gave such a definitive yes to this, that they're going to allow it.
And again, this goes back to our commentary at the start of the episode, that I believe, and I hate, if it weren't for the fact that I'm already past the refund date for this event, and that I can't literally give my ticket to somebody else so somebody else can go, and that I can spend time with my wife and my daughter, like, I think the TO literally just wants to put a middle finger up to GW and go, like, look what you've done. Look at this playtesting that you quote unquote are doing. You have literally written a rule that says that the only requirements to be eligible to shoot is that you either didn't advance, which, by the way, we haven't even talked about. That gets ignored if you have the assault keyword, or if you are in Devastator Doctrine as a Space Marine, or having fallen back, being in a tactical doctrine, or, as Bryce mentioned earlier in our Facebook chat, you can just use adaptive strategy and put a single unit into those doctrines. Devastator to ignore, to be able to fire while you advance.
Yeah, so let's talk about this for a second.
Or tactical, to be able to fall back and shoot, right? Which then makes you eligible to shoot and then action, which is a clear misinterpretation of the rule, but the TO's like, you know what? Rules is written, that's exactly what it says, so by God, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's just a dumpster fire.
So let's talk about how this applies to vehicles. Because a vehicle can shoot in, if it's tapped in combat, it is still eligible to shoot as long as it doesn't advance and it doesn't fall back. So you can go up and you can tag a vehicle, and then on that player's turn, they can shoot with that vehicle. Since we have that rule in 10th edition now, they can shoot outside of their combat, and then they can go, am I standing on an objective? Is my OC high enough that I control it? Okay, cool. I'm gonna cleanse this objective now too with this repulsor that I have, right? Like, it's just absolutely wild.
Let's talk about Tau for a second.
Do we have to?
Okay.
This just makes me sad.
Because I played Tau this weekend, and I failed to table Custodes by 3 wounds. And I was playing the rule as it was intended to be played, not the broken nonsense version. I was playing it to where one unit could guide another unit, and then it couldn't, the way Tau sets up with this is that every unit that shoots past the first one will be guided, which means that they have +1 ballistic skill, and if the unit doing the guiding has a marker light, and if you're building for Show Me, why would you not put a marker light on it? They ignore cover. So you have an army in Tau that was costed based on the thought that they would be ballistic skill 4 and sometimes ballistic skill 3, that is always ballistic skill 3 and ignoring cover. It's gonna hurt, guys. Tau are probably going to overperform at Show Me, as long as they can find a way to play the primary, because that was the major problem I was having as Tau was playing the primary. Damage, after I figured it out, damage was not the problem, even with the correct playing of the rule. With the rule being played in its broken state, who knows?
But that pretty well covers like a lot of the. Oh, and the other one, which is, and we actually talked about this, Cox, while we were up on Thursday getting the game in, and before we went and had curry, that Gazgul can ride in a truck, because there's no restrictions that say that Gazgul can't go in a truck.
Gazgul can indeed ride in a truck. And unlike the battle wagon, he does not take up 18 models worth of spaces in the truck.
Yep, because the battle wagon is what has the rule that says he takes up 18 spaces, and Gazgul's just an infantry model, so he fits in the truck. Peyton pointed out to me today that Mega Knobs have the Mega Knobs keyword, not the Mega Armored keyword, so they also only take up one slot in truck. So that's fun.
Yep, and he's got their clarification is down there now. Since they are infantry, 12 Mega Knobs can fit in a truck.
Yep.
And I haven't done in-depth overview of orcs, but I imagine that will probably see play if somebody is reading over the rulings document and goes, oh wow, I can just do truck and Mega Knob spam, which is probably not terrible.
Mega Knobs are a little overcosted, but yeah, no, not terrible. I mean, trucks being 50 points apiece means that you're just taking trucks anyway, right? Trucks are good. And Orcs had a pretty good showing in the numbers on the first Meta Monday. They were doing a pretty decent job. But we should probably start actually getting into the player pack itself, since we're 20 minutes in. The first thing I want to mention, because this is going to color a lot of our discussion of this event, is the way the terrain is set up. And so I'm just going to read the first 3 lines here about terrain. So bear with me for a second. Terrain will be player placed on all tables. We are using true line of sight on all tables. Most of our ruins contain line of sight blocking on the first floor built into the terrain, so you will have a lot of first floor blocking. Additionally, each player may choose to have one of their pieces of terrain be fully line of sight blocking. Now to me, fully line of sight blocking means all the way around. That's a magic box, folks.
Which was gotten rid of in 8th edition because it was non-interactive, and yet people still find ways to put it back into their player packs.
So you're going to see Desos sitting 1.1 off a wall inside a magic box.
Yeah. That second line, right? That they're using true line of sight. I saw that initially, and my hopes got raised. I'm like, okay, never mind. The opposite, right? True line of sight. There's windows. It was the second sentence that's most of our ruins contain line of sight blocking on the first floor built into the terrain. So obviously they're considering the impact that towering is going to have, and they're trying to make that carve out, right? Like here there's going to be ruins that don't have windows. You can hide behind them, so you don't just get tabled if you go second.
Yeah, that line to me reads like, don't panic. We understand towering is a
also,
problem.
Most is not all. And I don't know if you were looking at the player pack, but they have a picture of an example terrain feature. And I don't know about you, but there looks like an awful lot of windows on those ruins to me.
Yeah, it So the other thing too is imagine that you want to get at this one Imperial Knight model. You're like, cool, I'm going to shoot at this Imperial Knight model. And if they pick a gigantic piece of terrain like some of these are in the picture, well, this is fully line of sight blocking, so you can't see me because all these windows are actually boarded up, quote unquote, because it's fully line of sight blocking. So I'm going to place this terrain in such a way that as an Imperial Knight player, if I go second, I'm behind this fully line of sight blocking terrain, so you're not going to be able to see me because, again, fully line of sight blocking in all caps.
Well, let's talk that even further, right? So for a vehicle, you can't just tap a piece of terrain and see into it anymore, right? Per the core rules, the ruin rules, to see into a ruin, right? You have to be in the ruin. Is that what it is?
So you have to see into the ruin. You have to be, if you're a vehicle or monster, you have to be fully inside that ruin.
Yeah, fully inside the ruin. Yeah. Okay. So as a knight, right, that magic box means that whatever's in there is just never dying.
Yes.
Because you can't ever see it. So you're going to have some form of indirect. Bring your missile hats, right? Bring your indirect on your chaos doggos.
Right, but then so it's just going to become a massive indirect war, right? Because if you're a Marine player, you're never losing your Desos until you want to step them out to direct fire. If you're Eldar and you're bringing your support weapons, hallelujah to you. Here's your toughness 5 indirect that the Desos are not very good into. Like,
Are support weapons in
they are vehicles, I believe.
So you wouldn't be able to get them inside the magic box?
You can enter a ruin, can't you?
Oh, right. Well, I guess you would have to pick one that has an opening that you can actually sit inside.
Sure, so if you get, like, one of these L pieces that's got, a first floor blocks, then there you go.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess if you put it far enough in your deployment zone, it's fully line of sight blocking you could just deploy them inside on the bottom floor.
Yeah, because it's player place, so you can control where that ruin's going to be. So, you have normally the one of the few limitations that you have on a support weapon is it's only range 24 and it moves 3 inches, so you can outrange it. But if you can control where, like, you have a piece of ruin that they can put it, and you put it right up on the line of your deployment zone, and you can put all 3 of your support weapons in there that are covering all of the midfield objectives. I mean, I hope you brought whirlwinds.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing.
So moving down the pack into the player place terrain rules, right? Pretty standard. Winner of the roll off gets to place first terrain. There's a couple bullet points. Must be placed on your half of the board. Again, pretty standard.
Yeah, the one thing...
No piece of terrain can be placed within 1 inch of the 40 millimeter objective marker.
Yeah, that one is new.
And then it's 4 inches... and then each piece must be placed at least 4 inches away from the board edge and at least 4 inches away from any other piece of terrain. So you can't... for example, you can't just put it right on the middle of the objective because... Again, in the Wild West that is 10th, GW, for I guess just the sake of having change, made it to where you can't stand on top of or be within range of the 40 millimeter objective marker in the middle, so neither can your terrain.
So I wonder if that's actually going... So I'm looking again at their example terrain picture, and normally, if this was a 9th edition event, that looks fairly dense, and I'd be quite happy with that. But with that new restriction now, if you can't be within an inch of any of the 40 millimeter objective markers, in addition to having to follow the restriction of being at least 4 inches away from the board edge and any other piece of terrain, I kind of get the feeling that people are going to not be able to place all their terrain.
So, looking at that terrain, the example photo at least, there are multiple pieces that are within 4 inches. I don't think this is an example of what the terrain is going to be like on each table. I think it's an example of what the terrain will draw from. I think this is what our ruins will look like. This is what our crates will look like.
And that makes sense.
This is what our forests and craters... Because, I'm looking just at a glance, and there's at least 6 or 7 different pieces that are within at least 2 or 3 inches, so...
Yeah, and...
I wouldn't hold fast and steady to that being what the board looks like, but...
Yeah, and that makes sense. Though, as you mentioned crates, Ward, I want to take a second to point out, do those look an awful lot like the really, really big crates that we played with at Midwest Conquest? Because they sure look like to me.
That looks at least like a 5 to 6 inch in length container that is probably... the equivalent of a first floor of a ruin. So yes, those are some very large containers.
And with regard to the not being able to stand on the objective markers, I think logistically I figured out why that rule exists, and it's because of how much the objectives have to move. Because you don't want models standing on the objective and then have to remove the model, move the objective, and then replace the model, because then you have a discussion about, well, what was the model actually, right?
Yeah.
So moving down the line, again, they are, if it is in the rule book, that's exactly how it's being played. So, part of our swag bag stuff is going to be 40 millimeter objectives, and it outlines exactly how at what ranges the model is within an objective marker, and then the level of control in which it has, and how to do that, and that specifically models cannot end a move on top of an objective marker. It has a brief comment about using neoprene objective markers, and if you're going to do that, to also have a 40 millimeter marker on there as well. Some stuff about active judging, code of conduct painting, pre-event game rulings, which we've already discussed, and then it goes into the missions.
Real quick, brief tangent. So they do have this little cutout about facts, rulings, and mission cutoff. So the rules, the cutoff date for rules is July 7th, but they do have the carve out that if Games Workshop possibly releases a grand tournament pack before that, they leave themselves open to the possibility of adjusting the missions to align with that pack. Do you think, very briefly, that might happen?
I do not think that Games Workshop is going to make any sweeping changes before WTC.
Well, do you think it'll affect the missions we're about to talk about? Right? That if they come out with a recommended pairing of deployment, primary, and mission rule.
I do not. And the reason why I say I do not is that you figure the 1st of July is this Saturday, and there's not a GT pack on pre-order for this Saturday. But what we are going to be doing, or at least what I believe the Show Me Showdown group has decided to do, is they have already drawn the deployment, the primary mission, and the mission rule for the 8 rounds Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament, July 14th through 16th. Bryce, what are we doing in round 1?
So round 1, Dawn of War, priority targets, and targets of opportunity. So walking it down real quick, your primary is at the end of each command phase from rounds 2 to 5. You score 5 victory points for each objective marker you control. It's capped at 15 per turn. Each player scores, and then at the end of the game, you also score 5 for each objective marker you control. So this one, I don't think is that crazy until you get to the mission rule. So in targets of opportunity, each time a player determines which secondary mission cards are active for them, if they have fewer than 3 active secondary mission cards, you draw from your mission deck until you have 3. So in this one, you are being very strongly rewarded for choosing to play tactical instead of fixed secondaries, which we didn't mention. This tournament is allowing both the option to pick fixed or tactical secondaries, as well as gambits. All 3 of those are going to be part of this. In addition, each player has access to the New Order stratagem and can spend CP to use it after drawing their secondary mission card, if they wish, with the caveat that fixed mission cards cannot be discarded for any reason. So essentially here, you're just being told you want to play tactical.
Well, in something that probably needs to be discussed with or at least be put into the ruling, is on the mission card itself. As I was doing some research yesterday evening, the targets of opportunity card says that if you pick fixed, right, and you pick your 2 fixed missions, that you still draw 1 tactical mission to get to that same 3 active secondary cards. Whatever fixed missions that you did not choose are immediately discarded from your pack. So you only have the 2 fixed missions, fixed secondaries that you picked, and then you draw tactical for the rest. But it doesn't say that in this mission rule within the player pack. So that probably needs to be clarified, because there's another point on this same one that on the card for priority targets, it says, for battle rounds 2 through 5, at the end of each command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 victory points for each objective marker they control, up to 15 in the player pack. But on the card itself, it says 10 per turn.
You know what concerns me about this mission? Cox, I'm going to ask you, in the games that you have now played of 10th edition, how often did you find yourself going, I really wish I had more command points right now?
Gosh, all the time. All the time. Because I was sitting there having to bank them for so many things, right? You're using 1 a turn on Overwatch, and then you've got generally 1 good faction secondary that you're wanting to use every turn. So, you're bleeding your command points, and unless you have some form of CP regen, you're just going to be sitting at 1 or 0 basically.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just kind of putting this together now. So this might not be how this works. But if you come up to this, it's a mission that does incentivize tactical, but if you have good fixed secondaries you can take, like you have 2 that you can take against your opponent, say they give up, bring it down and assassinate, they're going to give up a 20 on it. What's stopping you from taking those 2 fixed secondaries, drawing a tactical one, and each turn just going, yeah, I don't need to score this, I'll discard it for a CP?
Absolutely nothing, and that is a thing that is going to be doable in some matchups. Right?
Okay, so that is a thing, right? Like if you discard a tactical secondary at the beginning of your turn,
End of your turn,
or at the end of your turn,
you
get a CP. Okay, I saw that on a Tabletop Tactics video, and when Peyton and I were playing, I was like, "Hey, I can discard this now and get a CP," and he's like, "What?" I was like, I saw that on a video. I was like, I don't know if that's real, but okay.
So, I need to check the wording on that, right? Because you only get that if you're choosing to play tactical, so I'm not sure if the extra secondary card that you draw, like the third one here, it's weird because I don't know if you count, like, do you count as having picked fixed, or do you count as having picked tactical, and does that matter?
Yeah, again, the third ruling that you have to have for the very first round of a tournament. Yay, GW. So my thoughts on this one, it's Dawn of War, right? It's kind of the same setup as old Abandoned Sanctuaries. So you got a midfield objective, and then about 20 inches along the long side of the board edge, you have 2 other objectives. So I think probably having a little bit of infiltrating units will probably be pretty good here. Since it's true line of sight, probably having some type of infiltrate or lone operative type interactions, or just having the speed to get on multiple objectives at one time will probably have some play to it. So
this is going to be one that you win by having better secondaries than your opponent, because you max your primary by holding 2 objectives.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, and Cox and I were talking about this briefly, is that with targets of opportunity, since you score better when you take tactical missions and you're generating 3 a turn, like this will probably be the highest scoring round of the tournament. I think
I agree.
overall.
Yeah, this is going to be the one where just everybody farms points.
So then we go. Go ahead.
And if you have if you have an opportunity to give your opponent like a 5 or a 0 or something, that's going to be huge on this map specifically because it's so easy to score primary. Because then they have to start extending. Like you're absolutely, if you get your first drop and you have a shooting list, you're going to just stop that crate. Just be like, okay, well.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Battle Round 2.
Oh boy. It's Crucible Battle, Take and Hold, and Scrambler Fields. Hey guys, we got the Scrambler Fields.
You do indeed.
Are you ready?
Have you played Scrambler Fields yet, Ward?
I read it, and this is kind of an ongoing joke about Dawn and I's experience on Abandoned Sanctuaries throughout 9th edition. Here's the thing, like, the restrictions for Scrambler Fields just make it to where you can't infiltrate on an objective, or you can't scout move on an objective.
Cox, do you want to?
Or you cannot arrive from.
Do you want to read us through what this whole mess says?
Yeah, I got it. So, okay. So this is funky deployment. This is the one that I hate looking at because it is not aesthetically pleasing to look at the card, the deployment card. It is very ugly because it is offset and it's corners. So it is a very ugly card to look at. It is still 5 objectives. It is take and hold for your primary mission. So it's at the end of each command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 victory points for each objective marker that they control, up to 15 per turn. And then in Battle Round 5, the player who went first scores as normal. The player who went second scores at the end of their turn. So this is Nakba Darks Omen in a turn for the second player scoring. The first mission we talked about was top of turn for everybody. This one is end of turn for second player on 5. Right? And then we get to the mission rule Scrambler Fields. Okay, so players' units with infiltrators cannot be set up within range of an objective marker that is either in no man's land or their opponent's deployment zone. Players in a scout that make a move before the first turn cannot end that move within range and objective marker that is either in no man's land or their opponent's deployment zone. If any rule is used to redeploy a unit, that rule cannot be used to set up that unit within range of an objective marker in no man's land. And whenever a player reserves and strategic reserves are set up on the battlefield, they cannot be set up within range of an objective marker that is either in no man's land or their opponent's deployment zone. Now, the reason that this is so impactful is because, from my experience with 10th and the games that I've watched of 10th, this is a very reserve-heavy format. Most players are reserving somewhere between 600 and 1,000 points of their army.
You know what's crazy about this one that I didn't realize until I played it this last Saturday at an RTT? Abandoned Sanctuaries used to be awful because you couldn't bring your reserves in turn one. You couldn't, forward deploy or scout move, right? This one lasts the entire game. It never ends. So we've done it. We found I didn't think they could make Abandoned Sanctuaries worse, but this is worse Abandoned Sanctuaries. So I played against Deathwatch on this mission rule in the RTT on Saturday, and he brought 2 units of 3 Inceptors, which I thought was, great unit, right? 3-inch deep strike is really, really good. Because he would constantly use them in previous games to, drop onto an objective, shoot something, and probably steal it. But on this mission, you can never drop onto an objective to steal it from your opponent.
Well, but you can still interact with their primary, though.
How? You kill them off it? You cannot contest it.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, if you got something that will drop there and kill it, but you can't flip it. After that round 3, I had Peyton come up to me and was like, "Hey man, it's a good thing you didn't play me round 3 because I just don't see a way that Gene Stiller Colt wins that matchup because they're all about jumping on your objectives out of reserves and strategic."
Yeah, it's kind of rough. Because
but the first three bullet points, that was what made Abandoned Sanctuary so bad in 9th edition, was that you just couldn't infiltrate. You couldn't scout move. You couldn't, redeploy or for that matter. At least you can, and my thought is, say you wanted to engage as a fixed or a fixed secondary. That wouldn't even be an option in the old Abandoned Sanctuaries. This one at least allows you to infiltrate or scout move outside, within no man's land. You just can't end that move or infiltrate directly on an objective. The far more impactful thing is the 4th bullet point. And I can see how that would be, how that's a big deal, but I mean, you could still mitigate somebody's primary by deep striking or rapid ingressing or whatever outside of that objective marker, and then either move to contest it with rapid ingress the next turn, or just shoot them off the objective. So when it comes over to their turn, you can still interact with their primary. You just can't flip it for something like shock tactics.
Magic box
or whatever.
Magic box wherever you want it.
Yeah, this one's gonna be interesting.
This will be, and this was one that immediately kind of sparked the conversation in the Facebook group. But this one will be an interesting one. But I don't think that. I mean, I think you'll still probably be able to score relatively well, because I mean it still is 15 per turn for holding objectives, right? 5 VP for each one. You just kind of have. This will be a little bit of more of an interaction with the player place terrain, I think. Since you can't place a piece of terrain on an objective in no man's land and then deploy right on it, right? There will be some things you'd have to take into account, but. And then the last mission for day 1 Round 3 of 8 is deployment's going to be Hammer and Anvil. Primary mission is going to be Vital Ground. And then the good old mission rule, Vox Static. So I'll briefly run through this one. There's a special rule after setting up the battlefield. Remove the objective marker no man's land that is closest to the center of the battlefield. So is this only a 4 objective mission?
It is indeed a 4
This is
objective
a 4 objective mission.
Oh, okay. Cool. Anyways, I didn't know that was... I had missed that, I guess, in my previous read-through. But battle rounds 2 through 4. Right at the end of each command phase, scores VP as follows. If you control the objective marker in your own deployment zone, 2. And then for each objective marker in no man's land, worth 5. Right. This is going to be
This is going to
be a tough one.
To me, this is just going to be a massive win more mission. Like,
yeah, I imagine you can if you are winning this game, your opponent is probably going to score very, very few points.
If you are holding 2 objectives for all 5 rounds that you can score, you score 35 on primary. So it's going to be the first person who can have that flip turn to score a 12 by holding their home and snagging both of the middle objectives is going to flip the game from that point.
Yeah.
I do have a question real fast, though.
Yes.
Bryce, how many times in all of your games of 10 so far have you used command rule?
Well, never.
Me either. Do we think Vox Static is a rule that exists?
I don't know.
So I
what
think
it
the
is.
only thing that it could be impactful for is say you've tallied up all the points and you're like going into the bottom of 5 and you're playing tactical mission and you're like, I have to flip and score on these 2 missions. I have to be able to score in 7. I don't know. Like, you have to be able to get both missions that you flip over.
You know the crazy thing about this mission rule? You know who it doesn't penalize in any way whatsoever? Eldar.
Eldar.
Yeah. What Eldar player is ever going to need to, like, even when it's 1 CP, ever needs to command reroll anything?
Yeah.
And you know what there's going to be a lot of?
Just
Eldar.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call
I
it.
think
I'm going to call it right now. Somebody's going. A lot of people are going to happen, but probably the most brutal dumpstering of a triple Wraith Knight list into somebody is going to happen on this mission.
Yeah.
I can definitely see it.
I can totally see that somebody comes out with less than 20 points in literally a 30-minute game, if not less, and it's just people are just going to be like, well, I guess I'm going to go to the bar early, or I guess I'll just drive back to the Airbnb or whatever and just call it a day, because this in stark contrast to round 1, where we think that you'll score pretty highly. Like, I think you could get absolutely shut out in this mission.
This is going to be win big. Like, you're just going to crush your opponent if you're winning this game.
Yeah, I was looking through some results from some events and stuff, and this is by far this primary setup has been the lowest scoring primary setup that I've seen. I saw a game on this setup that had a primary score for one player of 0. Their total game score was 6.
So that's day 1, right? We move on to round 4. Round 4, the deployment is sweeping engagement. Primary mission is the ritual. The mission rule is Chilling Rain. So the special,
which is no rule.
Yeah. So the special rules on this setup in particular: when setting up the battlefield, remove all objective markers in no man's land except the one closest to the center of the battlefield. So I guess this is a 3 objective mission.
Oh, just wait.
In each player's shooting phase, the player whose turn it is can select one unit from the army that is not battle shocked and eligible to shoot, which is
anything.
Until the end of your turn, that unit is not eligible to shoot or declare a charge. At the end of that turn, the player whose turn it is can set up one objective marker wholly within no man's land and within 1 inch of that unit, provided it can be set up exactly 9 inches from one other objective marker and not within 6 of any other objective markers. So this one you just move, and I guess you have to move with exactly within 9.
So you move to within an inch of exactly 9 of one of the objectives in No Man's Land, and then you set up the objective.
Oh.
Yep. So, does it say how many times you can do that?
It does specify that it's 1 unit. Where was that? 1 unit from your army that is not battle shocked and is eligible to shoot. So it is not. You cannot set up multiple.
So this. Well, I mean, I guess. I mean, but this, going back to the age-old question about, like, is it better to go first or go second? Like, this lets you just, like, deploy a unit, walk up to be within 1 inch of within 9 of the objective, and just drop an objective.
Yeah, but it doesn't say you can only do this one time in the game, so you can do this once each turn.
You can do.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So here's my question to you guys: how much access do your armies have to lone operative?
Yep, right. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, hey, if you're an Imperium army, you have at least 2.
You do indeed. You have, or just general Imperium. You're talking assassins.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If you are an Imperium army, you can take at least 2 assassins. So that's 110 for a Calidus, and then 80 for a Vindicare. So that's 190 for a set, and then you just go from there.
Is a Vindicare really only 80 points?
It sure is.
That's cheap for what it does. But...
Oh, you want to hear something? You want to hear something better, Ward? You know who is? It's like 75 or 65 points. 75. A Death Jester.
Oh, Death Jester. I thought you were about to say the Eversur.
Oh, the Eversur is too? No, man. I'm looking at all these from the lens of elf nonsense.
Oh yeah,
who
yeah,
can
right.
just as easily abuse lone operative because they have that Autarch as their warlord who's lone operative, who in addition to being a good model just gets you more CP at the start of your turn. You can make a lone operative squad of Rangers, and then the Death Jester, who has been cropping up in some of these early Eldar lists as just a third lone operative unit to exist in the game.
Yeah, this is going to get very, very sloppy. Like
Lone operative is a very important rule to have access to in your list. I think that if you have access to it, you're just going to take as much as you can, and as long as you can keep your list intact, right?
Yeah, this will be an interesting one, but it will be, again, as Bryce discussed earlier, and so did Cox. Like, this will be a lot of play out of reserves, stuff coming in from Ingress, stuff coming in from Deep Strike, and being like, cool, I'm a Deep Strike in, I'm going to shoot you, and because I'm still eligible to shoot, I'm going to drop an objective here, because you'll be able to Deep Strike and put stuff exactly where you need to, and just basically handpicking where you want your stuff to come in from. It's going to be nuts, but that is round 4.
And we are moving into round 5. Round 5 is Dawn of War, Supply Drop, Maelstrom Battle, which means that you're going to have 2 secret rules on round number 5, because that's what Maelstrom Battle does. So Dawn of War, it's, we've seen it before, we all know it's 5 objective Dawn of War. Supply Drop. Supply Drop is...
So this one is this is something we haven't seen before out of primaries. It is scored at the end of your command phase, starting from battle round 2 onward. But unlike the other ones we've seen before, you gain increased CP for each objective becomes worth more victory points if you control it in the later rounds. So from rounds 2 through 3. The player whose turn it is scores 5 victory points for each objective marker they control in No Man's Land. In Battle Round 4, that increases to 8, and in Battle Round 5, that increases to 15 victory points if they control the objective. I think if they control the objective marker in No Man's Land. Is this the one where they start to disappear?
Yes,
Yep.
this is the Alpha and the Omega. Yep. So this is the one where at the beginning of the battle, it randomly selects 2 objective markers that are no man's land. The first is the Alpha, the second is the Omega, and then at the start of the 4th battle round, the Alpha just straight up disappears. And at the start of the 5th battle round, everything but the Omega that's in no man's land straight up disappears. So you end the game with 1 objective in no man's land, and that objective is randomly determined. And that objective is worth 15
And importantly, the person who goes second gets end of turn scoring.
Yeah, it is nutso. This is going to lead to some imbalanced games.
Yes. What was the mission in Nakmund and Arcs of Omen? Was it the one that was also with the weird deployment? But basically, like if you go second, you could have something like a massive 40 to 50 point primary swing just by being on correct objectives.
Oh, that was
old.
old.
It was offset.
That was old Tide.
Yeah, Tide of Conviction.
That was old Tide because they changed it to where instead of they changed it to where it was 2 per, but before it was if you held an objective like in your opponent's deployment or on your opponent's side of the table.
So what if? So this mission answers the question: what if Tide of Conviction, but instead of the objective being 20 inches away from your deployment zone, they're 12?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing: I think this one will be interesting because I think this is just going to be one of those win more ones as well. Because from everybody's experiences, you're tabled in turn 3, right? So the scoring on this mission may not even be accounted for in round 5. So
when balance starts to happen in 10th, to win this map, you better be able to Barney, right? You better have something that can go take an objective from somebody. But at the moment, it's just going to be imbalanced game scores because it's just it's not a playable format really at the moment.
Well, I was telling Peyton this. I was like, think about what one of 9th editions, and granted transhuman isn't a thing in 10th, but Deathwing Terminators with storm shields and thunder hammers, and they're 2 up and they're 4 up, and they you can, at least in 10th, right, you can be in cover, right, which doesn't improve your save, but it effectively negates AP, and have an Armor of Contempt, so if you're not even AP 3, they're still on a 2 up save, and you're like, man, that is really durable.
In a world without death wounds, it sure is.
Insert devastating wounds and access to rerolls or fate dice, and it's oh, okay, I mean, sure, that's 40 wounds worth of Terminators. Whoosh. Okay, I guess they're gone. Yeah. 420 point investment. Okay, bye. I don't think that you can say that there's a durable unit.
Oh, I disagree. There's one.
Sure, I know what you're talking about. But it still died.
It sure does. It's durable in the sense that there's a 50-50 chance that 10 of them come back next turn.
Yeah. Does that only happen one time, or does
no?
I
think you can do it however many times they die.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Wow. So if you don't remove the blip, they just keep coming back.
That is correct.
Correct.
Cool.
As long as he keeps rolling 4s.
No, the other stuff just comes back for free. But
anyways, so that's round number 5. Oh, we didn't even talk about the mission rules. If you draw a second, you can draw. Okay, you can draw 3 and discard 1 if you're playing tactical, and then if you're playing with reserves or strategic reserves, from battle round 2 onward, you have to roll a dice if you want to bring one in, and on a 1 or a 2, you can't bring them in.
Yeah, that can make for some very, very interesting games.
I mean, you were talking about in this mission, things arriving from reserve to set up an objective. I just think you just don't. I think you build a list that's got speed and you just start on the board.
Yeah, you can plan around delayed reserves. If your opponent decides to stick things in reserves, you can build a plan around, cool, everything's on the board, I'm just going to go table them, right?
Well, that is kind of how the game goes these days.
That is what I attempted to do to Eli and his Death Watch the other day at the RTT, and I got this close.
All right, let's power through these next ones because there's one that I really want to talk about.
We're gonna have to have some time at the end for that one.
Yeah, I'll take round 6. So deployment, search and destroy, right? The good
Quarters.
old 9-inch cutout in the corners. Primary missions, purge the foe. Mission rule is supply lines. Special rules. So at the end of the battle round, each player scores 4 victory points if 1 or more enemy units were destroyed that battle round, and an extra 4 if more enemies than friendly units were destroyed. So kill 1, kill more for those old heads in here.
It's old 8th edition ITC mission.
Note, a unit can, if it is returned to the battlefield for any reason, potentially contribute to this primary mission several times, assuming it has returned and was subsequently destroyed several times over. At the start of the 4th battle round, the objective, or rather the alpha objective, is removed from the battlefield. At the start of the 5th battle round, all objective markers in no man's land, apart from Omega objective, are also removed.
Quick 20-second take on this mission.
Does it denote which one's Alpha and which one's Omega?
I believe that was a copy-paste error.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because the primary rule for this one is hold.
So
primary for this one is hold one, kill one, kill one.
Just the card that this comes with just specifies that units that are returned to the battlefield can contribute additional kills to the kill more part.
Right.
Basically, if you play 8th edition tournaments, you
kill
know
kill
this.
one, kill more.
Yeah. This is the
kill one, kill
we
more.
haven't seen this in a minute, but this is a familiar mission setup for anyone who's played back in 8th edition.
And there should be lots of killing in 10th edition. So, I think this is pretty. So battle rounds for Purge the Foe, battle rounds 2 through 4. At the end of each command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 4 victory points if they control 1 or more objectives, and an extra 4 if they controlled more. So this is quite literally old ITC.
Yeah, it's exactly old ITC.
Kill 1, kill more, hold 1 for 4. Hold more for an extra 4.
The only criticism I have of this one is that since the games are pretty much over by round 3, if you were trying to score primary by killing your opponent, you might have just tabled them.
Right. And then
you might have to pace yourself.
Supply line was the mission rule. So in this mission, if a player controls the objective marker in their own deployment zone at the start of the command phase, roll a d6 on a 4+. That player gains 1 CP. Is that in addition to the one you gain?
It is in addition to the one that you gain at the start.
Okay,
so you can potentially start with 2. One thing that I would maybe look up, I don't know if this interacts, if the restrictions still exist of you're capped by how much you can regain per battle round.
That is correct. You can only gain an extra 1.
Okay, so if you have, say, the Autark who just gets you one at the start of your turn, you just don't really even need to do that. You start with 2. Yeah, fair enough.
This one of my poor take of 10th edition so far, this is a very cool rollback. Like the Purge the Foe, the fact that this is an old throwback to like old ITC 8th edition scoring is going to be refreshing, but I'm sure I'll probably play something like Eldar or Genestealer Cult and not have a good time around 6.
I'm fine with it as I played a bit in 8th edition tournaments. I'm fine with it as one of the missions that exist and not all of the ones that you're going to play. That's fine.
It felt pretty good as a palate cleanser. Okay, I've got to hold 1. I'm going to get my points. If I can hold more, that's great. But generally, just get 1 and then kill more. It's really easy to either hold 1 and kill more, or hold 2 and kill more.
Yeah, it's easy to score 12s on this one.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right, Cox. We move on to round 7.
Round 7, the penultimate, the one right before. Hammer and Anvil, Scorched Earth, Sweep and Clear. So, Hammer and Anvil is your deployment zone. It is a 5-objective mission. We're used to seeing Hammer and Anvil, so this looks like you would think it would look. Scorched Earth. Battle rounds 2 through 4. At the end of each command phase, the player's turn it is scores 5 victory points for each objective marker they control, up to 15 per turn. Battle Round 5. The player who has the first turn scores at the top, the player who has the second turn scores at the bottom. And then at the end of the battle, each player scores 5 victory points if one or more objective markers in No Man's Land were burned by a unit from their army, and 10 if an objective in their opponent's deployment zone was burned. So here we go. Here's the spice for this one. From the second battle round, in each player's shooting phase, the player whose turn it is can select one unit from their army that is not battle-shocked
So
and is
all of them?
eligible to shoot. So, in all of them, except for the ones that are battle-shocked, so probably all of them. Until the end of the turn, they're not able to shoot or charge, so you just do it after you're done shooting. And at the start of its controlling player's next command phase, if that unit is within 1 inch of objective marker that the player whose turn it is controls, that objective marker is burned and removed from the battlefield. So you can do an action to blow up objectives in the midfield. You can do an action to blow up objectives in your opponent's deployment zone, and you get points for doing it. This feels really, really win more.
Super win more.
So this is nuts, because if you are the first turn player, you can literally just I get never mind. It says 1 unit from your army, but if you have an early primary lead or maybe like secondary lead or whatever, you can just start burning objectives and go, like, you literally are not going to score any primary the rest of the game because I'm just going to burn these off.
So you start in the second battle round, so like if you go first, you basically look at your opponent's like, all right, I'm gonna burn one, so like you better come stop me.
Or even worse, say like you pop, I don't know, Assault Doctrine or Devastator Doctrine, right? And you advance like a Repulsor or Land Raider or whatever onto, specifically, I guess it would have to be the Devastator Doctrine. So you advance like this big OC model right on the middle of the table, kill enough models to where you're like control the objective, and then you're like, cool, I'll burn this objective. Right, so all the resources they have right there to hold that objective to affect their primary score, and you're like, cool, this objective just doesn't exist anymore.
So you can interact with it a little bit because the action is completed at the start of the controlling player's next command phase. So there is a window where they can go after the...
Oh, okay, I missed that.
There is a window where you can go out and you can try and stop the unit doing the action. But...
Yeah. And the mission, like the mission rule is sticky objectives.
And importantly,
so.
they do carve out that if an objective is removed from play because you burned it, you no longer sticky it. And I'm so like, that is just such a refreshing palate cleanser in this world of overlooked interactions and just poor playtesting. At least they got that.
But we have reached the point, guys. We've made it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Super Bowl Sunday. It is time to play football, folks.
All right, Ward.
I'm gonna take a back seat to this one and just let you guys entertain me with round 8.
Hold on to your butts here.
Hold on to your butt.
So the primary mission.
I'm holding my butt. Literally, I'm holding my butt.
Crucible of Battle. Primary mission: deploy servo skulls, and mission rule is chosen battlefield. So special rules. The objective markers that start the battle in No Man's Land are servo skulls. At the end of each turn, each of these objective markers can be moved up to 6 inches in any direction by the player that controls it. And then when moving them, you can't end that move on top of another objective model or inside of impassable parts of a terrain. You can't put them in a wall. Your primary scoring. From battle rounds 2 to 5, at the end of each turn, you score victory points as follows. 2 victory points for each servo skull that is wholly within 12 of your opponent's deployment zone, 5 for each servo skull within 6 of your opponent's deployment zone, and 8 for each servo skull that is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. These are cumulative, so if a servo skull is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, you score 15 victory points from that at the end of your turn. Chosen battlefield. In this mission, objective markers are not placed as shown on the deployment card. Instead, players roll off at the start of the place objective markers step, then alternate setting up objective markers one at a time, starting with the winner of the roll-off. One objective marker must be placed wholly within each deployment zone, and the remaining objective markers must be placed wholly within no man's land, as shown on the deployment card drawn. Objective markers must be placed more than 6 inches away from an edge and 9 inches away from all other objective markers. And if for whatever reason it's not possible to set up an objective that way, it's not put on the battlefield. So, objective markers move, and you get to control where they start.
It is.
I don't know who came up with these missions, but in round 8, they chose violence.
It is the worst possible combination that you could probably come up with, and they did it on purpose.
Yeah.
So this is so foreign because I think probably every edition prior to this, you want to be on the objectives. You want to stand on the objectives because that's how you score. That's how you score.
So Ward,
right? But imagine that you just don't even have to stand on objectives, and that the only thing that you want to do is to move.
So,
well, I guess you have to hold them to move
Ward,
them.
I have
So I guess
I have
there's
2
that.
words for you. Sticky objective.
That's right. Imagine, sir, if you will, a world where the objectives just walk across the board at your opponent of their own volition.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is, and here's the fun part, right? This is the last round.
Yeah, this is the finals.
This is round 8.
So does this is the measurement only to the 40 millimeter?
Yes, that is the objective marker.
Yeah.
40 millimeter objective marker.
Yeah, it is.
So this one is there's almost no sense in using neoprene for this one.
Oh no, you would be handicapping yourself so hard.
Yeah, don't even bother.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's gonna be such a headache.
So that means, one objective marker must be placed wholly within each deployment zone, and the remaining objective markers must be placed wholly within no man's land, as shown on the deployment card drawn. Right. So
you win the roll-up. You get to place 2 of the 3 midfield objectives.
Now follow me, okay? How do you do cleanse on this mission?
Crap. Oh, that's insane.
How do you... Yeah, right?
I don't think you do.
Yeah, what's...
Like, at all?
What is the objective marker that's in your deployment zone? 4?
I mean...
So here's a question. Is this... Okay, I know this is an absolute bonkers, like, primary mission, in addition with the mission rule itself. Is this not just like cool? I'm just gonna blow you off the table.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's just like you rock up and you're like, "Listen, we're not messing with this whole servo skull nonsense. Like, I'm just gonna try and table you."
Yep. You walk up and you choose assassinate and bring it down, and you choose violence and you just kill people, and then you worry about points at the end after they're dead in turn 3.
Yep. It's literally like cool. I'll just deep strike in on this stuff after everything's dead, or advance. Mm-hmm. And just be like, cool, I control this, and then I'm just going to push them this direction. Yeah. I'm going to move on to them, and I'm going to push them again. And cool, I get a 50 on primary.
Yeah, basically that,
Yep. You're going to walk up to this mission and choose violence. That's it.
Yep, it's just like the TO. You choose violence in round 8.
Yeah. I think specifically the TO chose this for the finals because he wanted this on stream in the finals to show how ridiculous it was.
Hey GW, you have literally created an absolute garbage deployment, or not deployment, rather.
This combination of missions is horrible.
It feels intentional.
It feels very intentional.
Because, like...
Well, and I think GW was trying to create, like, a fresh way to, like, cool... The only thing that we do is stand on objectives, and that's how you score primary. So I think GW, or at least some guy at GW or gal at GW is like, cool, we're gonna make it work. You just, if you control them, you just move them.
This just screams like the content creators who do the Warhammer Plus battle reports. You know what I mean? Like, this just screams the kind of weird, janky, thematic kind of battle that they just would love to be showing off as an example of the game.
Yeah, so let's think about it this way. Okay, what happens if you get football, right? You get servo skulls and you get scrambler fields. What does that look like? Is it worse than this? I don't think so.
I mean, no, I don't think it is.
Like, I think this is legitimately probably the worst combo that you could just, if you were handpicking the worst thing you could find, I think this is probably it.
Right, because like servo skulls under normal conditions, like depending on the map you get, like at least you know where they're starting, right?
No, you could do Maelstrom, and you could take Scrambler Fields and pick where the objectives are, because you can have two.
Oh, don't say such things. They might revise the player pack to do that.
Yeah.
They said that they're open to doing it. They might do it just to make it worse.
I mean, they're not going to listen to our podcast. We don't have anything to worry about.
What are you talking about? We have so much clout.
Yeah.
We have Ward.
All 38 subscribers we've got now? Hi, Mom.
Oh, if that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just a lot of these choices feel very intentional. And,
about a month ago, I realized that I was not going to be able to attend Show Me, just because of summer grad school responsibilities, and I was pretty bummed about that when I had to make that decision. I'm still bummed because, like, I would go and it's fun to go with our crew of buddies and just go play some Warhammer, but I'm less so after seeing the player pack.
So you're going to this, right?
I
is
am,
there
yeah.
any
Much to
is
my
there
chagrin.
any way that you could cosplay as a dumpster fire?
No, I will stay true because Joe will be there.
Oh.
I hope to, quote, fingers crossed, I hope to make it on stream again, but...
Oh, they'll demand you. He'll say that you're there, and you'll get requested. Come on, Ward. Yeah. We know your clout.
But... exactly what Bryce said. This is an opportunity to go hang out with all your bros. Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. If anything, you are getting a literal crash course in 10th edition with all the headaches, with all the learning. You could not ask for a better as far as stress, as far as getting literally every just absolute bonkers rules interaction thrown at you.
This is it's a once in an edition thing. You don't get this ever. This is a once in an edition event.
Well, this is it's more like
this, and this is
once every other edition.
It's a 10th edition. It's a 10th edition crash course, right? And that's what I told Ashlyn. I was like, babe, I literally would choose not to go, but the ticket was $100 and it's non-refundable because, surprise, oh hey, we're actually not going to change literally anything, and your ticket's not refundable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, thanks, man, because I probably would have chosen not to go.
Yeah.
Because the comment was made that if you're not playing... Excuse me, I have this like gnarly cough going on. If you don't choose Eldar, Imperial Knights, Chaos Demons, Thousand Suns, Gene Sword Cults, like, right, all of your main offenders of 10th edition, if you're not taking a faction like that, you are literally handicapping yourself, or Space Marines to an extent, with Desolation.
It's one of those things, right, where it's like, there are plenty of factions that I can see going 4-1, but there are very few factions that I see feasibly winning this event. You know what I mean? Like, Space Marines with the right run, like, if they don't bounce into, like, you know, they don't go second into a Knight list, they don't encounter triple Wraith Knight Eldar, like, if they have a good matchup, I think they could take it, but the problem is I don't think they get through the things that I think are going to win it.
Right, and the thing that just the thing that blows my mind, right, is and it happened to Shone when he went to play an RTT in Fort Smith, was like, I'm going to take this Land Raider, right, like the epitome of a Space Marine's assault vehicle. This thing is made to take a beating.
And it has never been more durable than it is right now.
It is toughness 12 and a 2-up save.
Gets cover.
And anti-tank weapons. And anti-tank weapons have been overall have strength characteristics have been decreased. And it's got, I think it even has smoke. And getting cover for vehicles is trivial. And he goes, well, I just lost a Land Raider in the top of 1 to Fate Dice Wraith Knight Overwatch.
I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Wasn't it? He lost 2 and part of a Gladiator at the top of 1.
Oh yeah, because you can.
Yeah.
You can. Oh well, this has this attached to it, or has this rule.
Yeah.
So I can actually use this stratagem more than once. So cool, like bang,
2
bang.
Land Raiders and part of a Gladiator. 1A.
Less lethal.
It's like, well, and it's just like GW. How do you not see this interaction?
Part of what I'm
gonna get on my soapbox for a second.
Okay.
Like how if you see this absolute outrage against Deathwatch's Hellfire rounds, like, oh, we need to fix that because that's not a good interaction. We don't want people taking that many mortal wounds. Well, GW, imagine that you can just like, cool, I have these fate dice, and I'm just going to auto hit with these and auto wound with these. Well, and because this counts as a 6.
So I guess
here's all these mortal wounds, and
is your question specifically about Eldar or about the unbalanced state in general? Because
it's just in general.
Because I think with Eldar specifically, there is the main contenders, but I think that whole index was just a massive swing and a miss. Because at this last RTT, I played a list that did not run any Wraith Knights, and I promise you that if D-Cannons catch a nerf and Wraith Knights catch a nerf, that thing will be just as oppressive. Like, I think the whole index was just a complete miss as far as balance goes.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think if you're like, cool, I mean, I guess if we're just going to do this, I'm going to take 30 Desolation Marines, I'm going to take 3 Whirlwinds, and 3 Thunderfire Cannons, and just be like, cool, what else can I take? Alright, I'm going to take some stuff to play the mission. Do I go first? Cool. I'm just literally not going to move, so you can't overwatch me. And I'm just going to just oath a moment something and just delete it. And then you're going to kill a couple of my units, and that's going to be fine, because I'm going to oath a moment the next unit, and I'm going to kill it. Like, there are just fundamental, and as a Space Marine player here, right, to my core, all those interactions are broken. Mm-hmm. Right, like I was telling Cox, and I know I told you, Bryce, and I told Peyton, but you can just put Chaplain Cassius in a 10-man assault squad, which gives their chainswords dev wounds, and here's 44 attacks that with sustained hits, because you can either pick lethal hits, sustained hits, or lance, and then it's just like, how did that make it through? And you can take Uriel Ventress and you can deep strike that unit, so you can rapid ingress that unit. That unit with lance, like if you go into the assault doctrine and you charge and you use 1 CP for Honor the Chapter, that unit kills a knight.
It doesn't feel like the group that has been balancing the edition for all of 9th, it does not feel like that was the same group that wrote 10th edition. Or, what we were more accurately probably seeing, it is the same group, but 10th edition was written, more than a year ago before they started getting a handle on, indirect and all these other problems that were generally in a good place in 9th edition that has been completely walked back in 10th.
Because of lead times on printing and production and stuff. probably dictates
Yeah.
that, a lot of that did happen before they started trying to correct a bunch of these things.
Yeah. Because it just feels
But
like a massive walk back of where we were from 9th edition. Like, there are a couple things in 10th edition that I like as a change. I personally enjoy the change to characters attaching to units. I think that's cool. I think it goes a long way to addressing Death Stars. But that is a very small drop in the bucket compared to the major problems that the edition currently has.
Okay, let's try to end on a positive note here, right? I'm just going to go around the horn. We'll each say, what is our one, so far, favorite thing about 10th edition? Try to find one. I'll give you a minute. Bryce.
So mine is actually going to be very quick. In playing Ultramarines, I don't think that Gilliman should give a second oath of moment. That is very strong, like arguably probably too strong. Right, coming from 9th edition, where my literal not leave home without it relic was seal of oath, which was effectively oath of moment. Right, but was tied to an aura around the relic bearer. I like that what the core keyword took away, or rather the lack of the core keyword in 9th edition, invalidating units. Like, I can't take this unit because it can't get rerolls, or I can't take this unit because it can't be affected by stratagems. The fact that as a Space Marine player that you can at the beginning of your command phase go, I'm going to Oath of Moment this target, and that anywhere, any unit, anytime can target that Oath of Moment target and get and benefit from your chapter rules, and not having to be tied to auras, and not having to be tied to like taking specific data sheets. I think it's refreshing to me, because it has made me look at my personal collection and going, I normally wouldn't bring this model because it didn't have the core keyword in 9th edition, but now it doesn't matter, because it can be anywhere, right? It doesn't have to be right next to Gilliman, or right next to whatever, to get your bonuses and stuff. And I just think from a list construction perspective, it has kind of given some freedom to allow new units into the meta.
Go ahead, Cox.
Let me get this straight. Okay, your favorite thing about 10th edition is the name of our podcast is now Anachronistic.
We are going to have to rechange that at some point.
No.
Nope.
It's stuck.
Nope.
It's staying.
No, we're the core keyword podcast,
It's just
baby.
going to date us,
And
though.
don't you forget about
It's
it.
just going to date us, though. Everyone's going to think we're irrelevant.
Dude, we literally talked about...
We're already pretty irrelevant.
30
listeners.
We literally talked about ITC, like 8th edition scoring, being like, oh man, that's going to be nice. That's something I know for sure.
Yeah, that was a bit of a hot take. I think that's more seen in the context of some of the other missions that were like, you know what, this isn't as bad.
Okay, all right, Bryce. What is your favorite thing so far about 10th edition?
So I already got on about characters. I think, kind of to what Ward was saying, I have a pretty big Marine collection, so it's kind of nice to look through the various lieutenant models I have and think like, oh, I could think of a reason to bring this one. Yeah. And that kind of applies to a lot of characters, right? It gives a new lease on life to some of the ones you wouldn't normally see. I also think... Two things. I think they did a good job at making vehicles feel durable, certainly compared to 9th. Like, I've played a couple test games with a Land Raider, and barring the massive exception of dev wounds being a problem, I think on the whole, durable vehicles that are meant to be durable feel durable. And then the other thing that I think was, there are exceptions, but is generally good, was they have done a good job of giving each weapon profile a job, right? Like, I look at the autocannons carried by Baby Knights in 9th edition which to me was just the perfect example of something that was good into everything, right? It was a gun that was good into pretty much any target they wanted to shoot it at. In 9th edition now, if you want anti-tank, you have to bring anti-tank. There's not really as much take-all-comers guns anymore, and I do think that is a good change. There are exceptions. Dev Wounds is predominantly the biggest exception because it's just good into everything, but on the whole, I think they did a good job at that.
Okay. Just to round it out, we're going to come to my favorite thing about 10th edition, which is the reduction of stratagem limit. Right?
Oh god, yes.
You no longer have to keep track of like 40 different stratagems that you might use maybe once every 3 months, or you might use once in an event if you're lucky. You've got 6, maybe, that you need to keep track of. You're going to use them all the time.
And they're all generally good,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason to use all of them.
Yeah. Now, they're not as good as Overwatch because you're going to use that every turn. But
Sure are.
But once they get Overwatch figured out and fixed, then would you pay 2 CP for Overwatch?
I don't know if I'd pay 2 CP with it, but I think I'd be fine if it was reduced in range from 24 to 12.
12 seems about right. At 24, it'd have to be 2 CP for me to like feel good about existing. Because
if it stays 24, I would see it going to 2 CP, but I think if they one or the other, I could live with.
So I can't remember where I heard it, and it. I doubt that it was any of our listeners that said it to me, but if it is, I give you all the credit. Having an action, like a set to defend action, right? Like that 10-man Inferno squad is like set up in this building, and they're like, there's a big shiny relic out on that objective marker, and we are going to forego our shooting this turn to prepare that.
Yes.
If something moves within a X, whatever X is, X range, that we can then overwatch that target. I think that would be such a cool rule.
I think that was on Stat Check they were talking about that. The idea that, like, you forego your shooting, but it's like, hey, this unit is going to set up to Overwatch. They're going to, like, as soon as somebody pokes their head around a corner in this area of the board, they're going to get roasted.
Yeah. The XCOM version of Overwatch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, it feels like that's what they were trying to go for with giving you Overwatch in the move-in phase. Right? It feels like they were trying to create area denial.
Well, it certainly does, but it does it by killing the unit.
Sure does. I will say, the one last thing that I will say positively about 10th edition is it's still Warhammer. I still enjoy playing it, and I still enjoy meeting up with everybody that we have in our playgroup to go and play Warhammer. Like, at the end of the day, I'll still enjoy it simply for that.
Absolutely. Like, just being able to hang out with guys and talk to everybody and have a good time. I was legitimately worried there for about a day after Ward played his one game of 10th edition when he said that he was quitting 10th and he'd see us in 11th, that he might have meant it.
I was worried when, after that one game, he immediately was like, yeah, I'm going to look at Knights. These Ultramarines are dead to me. And I'm like, ooh, that was a bad game.
Well, folks, I do believe that is going to be the end of our little foray into the first major event that the Hogs of War are going to be going to, Showdown, coming up here in July. So thank you all for hanging out with us here. If you are still here this far into the podcast, please click that subscribe button, click the like button. It really does help us out, and we certainly do appreciate it. Dawn, if you could hit the outro music, my guy, I would certainly appreciate you.